We now come to the general debate on the final report of the Airports Commission. To move the motion, I call Dr. Tania Mathias.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the motion standing in my name and in the name of my colleagues, Right Honourable Friend Member for Richmond Park and Honourable Member for Brentford and Isleworth. I would also like to thank the Backbench Business Committee for allocating time for this debate and thank the members who supported that application and also members who are present here today. I do believe this is an important debate that requires scrutiny before the government makes its decision. I'd like to pay particular tribute to my colleagues in neighbouring constituencies, our Right Honourable Friend Member for Richmond Park, Member for Brentford and Isleworth, who are both assiduous campaigners on the issue of airport expansion. Now, this report came out in July, after 2 years, about £20 million. And in July, as many people know, many UK families were preparing to go on holiday, perhaps using their local UK airport. And after 2 years, I, like many people, was wanting a report looking forwards, a report about our UK aviation needs. But like many people, I was disappointed. This report is filled with ifs and buts. It is shrouded in fog. Many of my residents, and I pay tribute to Teddington Action Group, have found fault with much of the analyses. Many of the councils, Richmond Council, Wandsworth Council, Hillingdon Council, Windsor, Maidenhead, they have found fault with the data. Too much fog in this report, and the conclusion for expansion at Heathrow will not serve UK's aviation needs. To start with, when we look at connectivity, the interim report said a third runway at Heathrow would be at maximum capacity by 2050. The final report advises against a fourth runway. So how can this be a long-term option for UK's aviation needs? If we look at domestic destinations, the report shows a decrease from 7 to 4. So bad luck for Scotland, bad luck for Ireland, and not good news for the Northern Powerhouse. Again, not a good option for UK's long-term aviation needs. If we look at long-haul destinations, the report's table implies there may be 12 extra long-haul destinations. But some analysts say if you compare the expanded Heathrow of 3 runways with Heathrow in the summer of 2015 with 2 runways, the actual increase in long-haul destinations is but 1. If we then look at over 250,000 increase in air movements, flights to and from Heathrow, if we look at that, the slots for these air movements in the report are going to be in the morning and peak evening period. That is when it will affect residents the most. If we then come on to the cost, again, we are shrouded in fog. The independent economic review said, and I quote, to counsel caution. Other analysts talk of double accounting. The report talks of aeronautical charges, but the airlines say Heathrow at present charges too much in landing fees and they would not pay extra charges. There is also a report of extra cost for the surface access. The Environmental Audit Committee could not work out, when they were deliberating with the Chief Executive, exactly how many billions this will require and whether the taxpayer pays or whether Heathrow would pay. Is it 20 billion or is it 5 billion? There's talk of a congestion charge in the report. This isn't costed out. There are schemes for the M4 and the M25 for access. Again, not costed out. But when we look at the effect on residents and we look at the report on noise, It says the noise will be divested, it will be dispersed. To me, with an expanded Heathrow, that just means more people are affected. But the report does say the noise impact will be at current levels.
Rubbish.
And yet, current levels for my constituency are intolerable, as has been demonstrated by Teddington Action Group. TfL says 1 million people may be affected by an expanded Heathrow. Heathrow is already the worst airport in Europe for noise pollution. With a third runway, Heathrow would be worse than Charles de Gaulle. It would be worse than Amsterdam. It would be worse than Frankfurt and Munich and Madrid. But beyond this, a third runway at Heathrow means Heathrow would be worse than Charles de Gaulle, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Munich and Madrid combined. Wow. This is not the way forward for UK's aviation needs. And when the report talks of night flight ban, which incidentally the Chief Executive refuses to accept, and this isn't a total night flight ban in the report, it's a quasi-night flight ban, does not conform to WHO standards, but even so, if you can have a night flight ban, a quasi-night flight ban for 3 runways, why can't my constituents have a night flight ban tonight with 2 runways? Already on average there are 16 flights between 4:30 in the morning and 6 a.m. Intolerable. The report does talk about an authority to liaise with the community. The report does point out there is no current trust between Heathrow Airport and the community. So why would a third runway increase the trust? The report talks of a noise levy. Will that be the passengers? Will that be the airlines? But for my residents, they are not interested in a noise levy. They are interested in a good night's sleep. The report talks about air quality, and here there is less fog, because the report does say expansion in Heathrow is contingent on performance on air quality. But Heathrow cannot manage air quality with 2 runways, so how will it manage with 3? And why in the report is nitrous dioxide levels compared from Heathrow with the worst road in London? Why doesn't the report compare it with EU levels, legal levels? The report, I'm coming. The report does not include the hypothesis that actually, going forwards, we may not want a hub airport. The report does not consider that actually regional airports may want the competition that an expanded Heathrow would remove. If the report is looking for a hub airport, then the Gatwick Airport option shows the same economic benefits and less environmental impact. The report does not, as we all know, consider a hub airport not in an urban area and perhaps in an estuary. I would want the government, before it makes a decision, to consider that for Heathrow, with a night ban that it will not accept, with a ban that the report calls for in further expansion, with a problem of environmental impact it cannot address with 2 runways, Heathrow cannot be the hub it aspires to be. The Prime Minister, in 2009, when he was leader of the opposition, said no ifs, no buts, no third runway. This is 342 pages of ifs and buts. It is not a solution for UK's future aviation needs, and before the government makes its decision, I would urge it to remember the promise of the Prime Minister. Thank you.